talk. It's AFC North football. It's AFC North wild card weekend. We're dominating this on the AFC side. 3 AFC North teams in the playoffs. 2 of them playing each other this weekend, and the 2 teams playing each other, same teams that played each other week 17. I told you might be tired of Tony's face by the end of these 2 weeks. But Tony, nice to have you back on again, man.
I'm happy to be back. My reverse jinx did not work last week. I'm going to try it again this week. Although I don't know if any of your listeners or viewers watch AFC North Talk. Quincy and I teamed up this week to try and reverse jinx the Baltimore Ravens. We'll see if that works out.
There's no way they can lose to the Titans. I really do believe the Baltimore Ravens are going to feel what everybody else in the AFC North has felt. What it's like to beat the Tennessee Titans.
Right.
They're finally gonna take. There's no way they can lose 3 times. And
impossible.
How embarrassing would that be to lose 3 times in the same year? It would be catastrophic. It would be catastrophic. So that's why they cannot lose that game.
Lamar Jackson can't play poorly in a playoff game 3 years in a row. Come on. It
would be virtually impossible for a team and a player of that caliber not to be absolutely dominant in a big time playoff situation. We know they've done it before, right? They've done it before, not in the playoffs, but they beat the Patriots in 2019. They beat the Browns on Monday Night Football.
That's right.
So they got some. There's no way the Titans pull that out. Zero chance. Put my Daryl Ryder out there, right? Zero chance. It's nothing. That might as well not show up. All right, so let's actually talk about our game instead of trying to reverse jinx Sonny. And by the way, if you know Tony, he does AFC North Talk with me, Ace, Boogie, Sonny. We have fun. We talk football. We do the real hard, difficult analyst stuff, and then we have fun in between there. So, it's not just a heavy drawn. We're not just throwing PFF grades at you all day. But speaking of PFF grades, we're going to throw a ton of PFF grades at you in this video. And we're going to break down this position grouping by position grouping, talk about what we think can be an advantage, what we worried about. First thing we're going to start about is on the defensive side of the ball for the Cleveland Browns. We're going to talk about the Steelers offensive line, which ranks 5. This is the weirdest split I've seen of all time. 5th best pass blocking offensive line, according to PFF. That could be what it is. In football, 31st run blocking, 31st run grade in football. That's a wild split. The Browns have the 11th pass rush in football. Obviously, like 95% of that is literally number 95, Myles Garrett. They have the number 18 run defense in football and a number 10 tackle grade. So, Tony, looking into that matchup just on the line of scrimmage, what are you thinking about?
Well, first of all, you talk about the difference between the pass blocking grades and the run blocking grades. First of all, one thing I want to point out, and there's been a lot of talk about this on analytics Twitter for any of you that follow that. There is something to be said for the idea that an offensive line is not solely responsible for sacks. Quarterbacks, have a big thing to do with sacks, and so. Ben Roethlisberger getting rid of the ball as quickly as he does, the game plan that goes into not taking sacks, I think has so much to do with why the offensive line has a good grade, sure, because the ball's out of there, right? So they're not asked to do much. I think for the Steelers in this game, their offensive line, they got to get the run blocking going. It's the 2 games that they've actually had some success rushing the football have been against the Cleveland Browns. For what success the Steelers have had, I should say. Because the Browns run for 250 yards a game. So for what success the Steelers have had running the football, they've had some decent success against the Browns. I'm sure that's going to want to be a part of the game plan in this one. But I think this is advantage Cleveland Browns.
You think so on the defensive side of the ball? Now, the Browns have Myles Garrett. They have Larry Ogunjobi. They don't have Olivier Vernon, who's going to be out for like a couple of years with the Achilles tendon tear.
Yeah.
So they're down a little bit of depth, like the rest of this team is down, especially the defense is down a lot of depth here. But I do agree with you. I think the big factor in this game, the thing that could really wreck this game offensively for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, you mentioned sometimes the Pittsburgh Steelers do that to themselves, but the one thing that can be out of control is Myles Garrett. I think if Myles Garrett, it's a ton of pressure, is the Myles Garrett that he usually has been against Pittsburgh. He just hasn't been that in 2020 this season against Pittsburgh for whatever reason. Both the games he did play there, he had a good game last week in run defense, but he just wasn't usual Myles Garrett where you're just worried that he's going to get a sack like almost every play. Now, it's a ridiculous standard, but that's, he's up there in the defensive player of the year conversation along with a guy like TJ Watt. So that's where he should be. So he could definitely wreck the game there because I can see if Myles gets consistent pressure, that's going to then affect the passing game, because a lot of the stuff that works in this Steelers offense is the stuff that Ben does not want to do, because Ben does not want to hold on to the ball anymore. And if Ben gets comfortable, I think he will find comfort if Myles doesn't have a big game, holding on to the ball a little bit more, throwing it deep downfield, finding Chase Claypool, because, we talk about Mason Rudolph did this in week 17. Ben did this in week 6. He had his best completed air yard game in that game. He found Chase Claypool a ton in that game. It looked like they finally found their stride as the offense in that game, but then, things regress. So if you can get to Ben, pressure him, make him worried, then all of a sudden all those the 5 for the Browns last week, they're not going to call those. Ben's not going to go for that. And Ben's going to start resorting to the shorter stuff, the juju plays, the plays that have not worked or have caused a lot of drops or a lot of things. And the way the Browns linebackers actually played that short stuff, now again, wasn't against Ben throwing the short stuff, but I think when short passes, like it really doesn't matter who's the quarterback in that sense. The way they played that, I think they showed that they could stop some of that short stuff. So if you can make it about that on offense, I think that'd be the key for the Cleveland Browns when it comes to trying to win this game.
I was just going to say, looking at this matchup, another thing that can be key for this defensive line, a lot of teams have had success doing this, knowing that the Steelers are likely to come out and continue primarily being a short, quick passing team. Don't necessarily, it's not necessarily every play it's key on get Ben Roethlisberger. There's a lot to be said for keep your eye on Ben and look for when that ball's coming out and get your hands up and tip some balls. And that's been very successful for teams this year. The Steelers have had a big problem with batted balls at the line of scrimmage. And of course, it's going to be that way when you are a short passing offense.
Yep. And one thing I always like to point out, because people get this wrong all the time, they think short quarterbacks get balls batted down at the line of scrimmage. Not necessarily true. If you throw short passes, those get batted down at line of scrimmage. If you look at normally the leader, it was Paxton Lynch was like the all-time leader at the balls batted down per attempt. Wow. And
not a small dude.
Blake Bortles, another guy, 6'5", the bigger quarterbacks, because you tend to just throw a lot of screens with the bigger quarterbacks because they can see over the line of scrimmage. Tend to have a lot of issues with that. Shorter quarterbacks, they tend to just go like Drew Brees earlier in his career would just go deep all the time. But that's a good look at the kind of front 7, I guess, matchup, because PFF doesn't have any linebacker specific grades. Tells you what they think of that position grouping.
Right.
But on the other side, you have Ben Roethlisberger in this wide receiving core. Ben is the the Steelers as a team has the 20, have ranked him, like you talk about, PFF grades have had him low, QBR has had him low, almost every advanced metric. And I think a lot of the short passes have to a lot to do with that, because they don't value those. But I don't think that's necessarily weighted properly. And this shocked me. The number 29th receiving core on PFF.
Yeah. That's because the drops. It's got to be the drops. Yeah.
That's
drops.
Yeah. Even come on. That's not accurate. And then the Browns have a surprisingly middling coverage grade of 20, considering, how bad Browns fans have said this coverage unit has been. So any thoughts on those matchups, Tony?
This is the game. This is the game right here. The quarterback battle is the game, right? Because every Steeler fan should tell you that the Steelers have a clear advantage at the quarterback position, Ben Roethlisberger over Baker Mayfield. But I don't know that any Steeler fan can confidently say that this week. We all want to believe it. I want to believe that Ben Roethlisberger is, the Steelers have a clear advantage here at the quarterback. This is Baker Mayfield's first start in the playoffs. This is Ben Roethlisberger, 18th start in the playoffs, something like that. And this guy's been around forever, and he's played in, he's won 2 Super Bowls, played in the 3rd. So I want to say advantage Ben, but I can't, because, like we've talked about a lot, this Steeler offense has been horrid at times recently because of these 2 position groups, because of the quarterback play. You look at Cincinnati and Baltimore and the terrible play of Ben Roethlisberger in those games. And then you look at the performances against Baltimore and Washington, where this receiving core dropped 14 passes in 2 games. I was just looking up the numbers, 40 drop passes for this receiving core this year, 40 drop passes. And by the way, even in the good game that they had, the good half that they had against the Colts, Chase Claypool dropped a sure thing touchdown that I know they overcame it, but those drops are still there. So can I say push? Am I allowed to say push in this one? Because, look, there's a version of this where Ben is the clear advantage, right? If Ben comes out and plays well, he's a clear advantage. I just can't sit here and tell you today that I'm confident that I'm going to watch that. And so it drops me down to a point where I will say this is the matchup. This is 50-50. And if Baker comes out and lights up the Steelers, Ben's got to do the same. And, the one who makes the big mistake is going to end up being the loser.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now, it's interesting to hear. I don't think you have been one of the ones doing this, but like Steeler fans were like, well, there's no way Baker can win in the first game, his first playoff game. I was like, didn't Ben win like the Super Bowl in his first playoff run or something like that? All right. So, I mean, like there was obvious, like he was built around at that point. That was a different Steeler team than what we see in the
Baker's got a good surrounding cast around him right now.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's, I guess, so yeah, similar to what you were saying here. It depends on what kind of Ben Roethlisberger you get. Again, this has a lot to do with that Myles Garrett conversation I had in the last grouping, right? If Myles Garrett shows up, all of a sudden, it's not going to matter as much that Robert Jackson is out there covering Chase Claypool or Terrence Mitchell is out there and he doesn't have the long speed or the lack of speed in the safety room, right? Because we're going to still have Carl Joseph out there. And I don't know if you have watched Carl Joseph play for an extended period of time. It is like the man is playing with the iron boots from Zelda. Like it's just, he has heavy hits like a truck, but he has the heaviest and slowest feet I've seen on a starting NFL safety. So him being out there
over Mike Mitchell for the Steelers at the end there.
Yeah, so barring something amazing happening with him, like the deep ball is going to be a problem. Myles Garrett is a solution for that. Now, if Denzel Ward does come back and play, that is going to be 100% who you put on Chase Claypool. If they don't, I'm questioning Joe Woods' decision there, right? Because Joe, not only is Denzel fast enough to keep up with Chase Claypool, he's somebody who has had a good track record of being able to be physical and keep up with those bigger wide receivers. And one of the things Chase Claypool struggles with is getting off the line of scrimmage. So you put a veteran corner on him, probably a steady dose of Terrence Mitchell and Denzel Ward who can jam him a little bit, then you'll just take your chances with Deontay Johnson on the other side. And in whatever they're going to, like the 5 yard per attempt, they're going to throw to Juju on like 3rd and 4th down. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm not as down in the secondary coming into this game. I know a lot of Browns fans just hear Big Ben, saw Chase Claypool go off, and they're just freaking out right now. They're like, oh my God. Yeah. We might not even have Denzel Ward. We know who Big Ben has always been, and I think that's valid. I think it's warranted. And I think the confidence that Steelers fans have is a little warranted, not necessarily how they played recently, but it's going to be interesting to see how they attack. And I think I'm going similar to you because I just don't think this is dependent on the DBs. I think this is still going to come down to that offensive line, defensive line battle. Yeah. So I have to just push it there and see what happens. Again, if Myles Garrett has one of those double sack days, triple sack days, yeah, this is obviously going to affect how the coverage is going against him. But I think Ben can really dice him up if he has the time, just like Mason Rudolph did.
And then going back to Baker for a second, so much of Baker and his play, I think, is going to be dependent on, hey, is this going to be a consistent ground game that the Browns are going to have? If it's going to be 2 yards to carry for Nick Chubb and Hunt, then I think, is Baker going to go out there and throw 40 times against the Steeler defense? You have a hard time imagining him doing that against such a good defense on the road in the playoffs and not making the big mistake, right?
Ooh, it's going to get hot in the trenches this week. AFC North football. Try that out for Tomlinism right there, right? It's hot in the trenches, AFC North football. All this is going to determine, and Sonny loves to say, O-line, D-line. It's
right.
bread and
butter.
All
in the trenches. All in the trenches.
All in the trenches this week. Truly all in the trenches, really. Now we're going to switch on the other side of the trenches. We're going to talk about the Browns offensive matchup versus the Steelers defense. And if the other side of the ball had some like weird rankings, this is just an elite on elite battle when you talk about offensive units coming into this game and what they're specifically good at and what Pittsburgh is good at on the defensive side of the ball. This is going to be just where the fireworks happen, right? And this is where Steeler fans are excited to see the matchup. This is where Browns fans are hopeful to see their strength shine through because good offense, good defense, both going at each other. Browns have the number 1 pass and run blocking offensive line in football by a significant margin, according to PFF and their composite grades, and the number 7 rushing attack in football. The Steelers defensive line, the number 7 run defense, so they're dead even there. Pass rush, number 1 pass rush in football, but another weird one for the Steelers, number 29 tackle grade. Has the tackling been an issue in Pittsburgh?
Certainly at times, right? I mean, I'm sure PFF didn't give Minka an elite grade on the on the Chubb touchdown on Sunday, right? We've seen plenty of that this year. We've seen some missed tackles certainly for the Steelers, and it's one of the things about the missed tackles is it's going to be that way when you have such an aggressive defense, right? The over pursuit and that kind of thing. It's gonna one thing I think leads to the other in that case.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting. So when you look at this offensive line matchup, defensive line matchup, obviously this is where both teams feel the strongest about their personnel. Now, the Browns are going to be short a player. The Steelers, to their credit, right? Because I know Browns fans, we don't got Joe Botonio. They're not going to have Bud Dupree, who's normally was a part of this unit. So how do you see this matching up? Obviously, I think you're going to favor the Steelers in this one, right?
I have to. Yeah, I have to. Because not only because of what happened in the first matchup, right, where the Steelers were dominant in this aspect, but even what happened last week. I think Steeler fans should be very encouraged by what happened last week. That they were still able to get pressure even without Cam Hayward, even without TJ Watt, that a guy like Alex Highsmith was able to have 4 pressures in a sack and caused another sack. And that, Wormley came up big in a couple moments. Stephon Tuitt was very good. Again, these are guys who, especially with Highsmith and Tuitt, right? The knack on them has always been, hey, Tuitt gets to play alongside Cam Hayward. That's why he's so good, right? That's why he had 11 sacks this year. And the same thing with Highsmith, right? We've seen Highsmith play well, but people will say, well, yeah, but he plays on a team with TJ Watt on the other side. And, that wasn't the case last week against the Browns. So I have to be encouraged by that. And then you look at the fact that the Browns are going to be without Bitonio on that offensive line. So I have to give the advantage here to the Steelers. A big advantage. I mean, this has to be the advantage for the Steelers because, like I talked about in the other segment, right? It's a 50-50 proposition between the Steelers offense and the Browns defense as far as what we're going to see. And if it's not good there, then it has to be good on the defensive side.
Yep. So I have some interesting news that just broke about an hour ago. I just saw here, and keep in mind, guys, I recorded this yesterday when you see this. Donovan Peoples-Jones, good news. He's returning from concussion protocol. That's great. Jack Conklin, right tackle, guy that's going to be blocking TJ Watt. He's idle with illness.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
We'll see. And somebody else who missed the game before with illness was Jedrick Wills. And I think Jedrick, of all the offensive linemen last week, just struggled against Highsmith for whatever reason it was. I would hope that in his second time around, 2 straight weeks back at it, he doesn't struggle as much because he has been such a good pass blocker all year. That was kind of odd to see Highsmith just kind of bully him all day. I'm just wondering what was going on with Jedrick Wills there. Given his track record all season, I don't expect that to continue next week, even though it seems like, they're going to have TJ Watt back, all these guys in the interior. It would seem like that. But I would expect Jedrick to put up a much better showing there. But the question is going to be, what are you going to do with TJ Watt? How many tight ends are you going to put on TJ Watt? And, with Wyatt Teller being healthy, you're going to pretty much just be running at TJ Watt the whole game because you can't necessarily go behind Joe Bitonio, who's not there, and then Jedrick Wills, who's not a strong run blocker at all. So you're not going to run to that side of the field that much. You're going to be running to the right side of that offensive line, which is where TJ Watt lives on that defense. Now, I'd be interested to see how often – was it Keith Butler still there in Pittsburgh?
Oh, yeah. Keith Butler, my best friend. My best friend, Keith Butler.
I'll be interested to see how often Keith Butler goes and puts TJ Watt out in coverage, because I think that could be something that could help the Browns, or what the Browns do to counter that. But, you're going to have to run straight at him. Now, I think that's away from Cam Hayward, which, it is. I was a little bit more afraid of Cam Hayward because of what he did in week 6 versus what TJ Watt did, who played a good game. It's just Cam Hayward was a monster in that game. He's always a monster against the Browns. So this is the battle right here also, right? Because if the Browns get that run game established, not only is Pittsburgh over aggressive just by nature, and then now they also kind of try to compensate for some of the loss at the linebacking play with just trying to just shoot gaps as fast as possible. If that run game is going well, and I mean, like, not even like, you got to get like 200 yards like they normally do, but if you get like around 150 yards, have that threat be viable so people know it's not just going to be 2-3 yards a pop or a loss of 2 like it was against the Jets game, then that play action pass could become really deadly because that's something that would be interesting. Pittsburgh, when they played Tennessee, who does a similar thing to the Browns, they shut down Derrick Henry. So they weren't as worried about losing on that side of the ball. So it didn't hurt them as much. But if you can get Chubb and Hunt going, especially early in this game, I think that will open up a lot of things in the offense. And one thing, and we're going to get to the next matchup, quarterback and receiving for the Browns versus the coverage unit for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Baker Mayfield ranked 10th overall. The passing attack is 10th overall. And the receiving attack for the Browns is pretty high for shockingly like 10. I don't think they get a lot of separation, but it's pretty high for them. And then the coverage unit for Pittsburgh, number 3. Now they're going to have players taking more snaps. They did have pretty much most of the secondary in there. I know you said Edmonds is going to be back.
Terrell Edmonds, the strong safety will
Edmonds going to be back. Vince Williams is going to take more snaps. Mike Hilton's obviously going to take more snaps. Stephen Nelson's going to take more snaps. But they still don't have Joe Hayden. And in the game, and we don't know who's going to be playing, but if you have Jarvis Landry, I like that they don't have their best corner because this team doesn't have much depth outside of Jarvis and Odell when they're there. They have Donovan Peoples-Jones. They have Rashard Higgins, but those are guys who have issues separating on elite corners. So where do you see this matchup going? Do you think this is going to be another Minka game, or do you think this is a game where the Steelers should be worried about what the Browns can do through the air?
No, I think I'm pretty comfortable with where the Steelers are in the secondary right now. I know Hayden's not going to play in this game, but it's so crazy to say this in Pittsburgh because their secondary has been was so bad for so long and didn't have any depth behind it. Like, I actually like the depth. I like Cam Sutton a lot, who's going to be starting in place of Joe Hayden in this game. I think the one worry for me, if I have one worry in this game, it's if the Browns were to come out and spread the Steelers out. I know it sounds weird because this is a 2 tight end type of offense in Cleveland wants to ground them out. Yeah, they can. They can go 5 wide. But then you're going to put Justin Lane on the field. Justin Lane is a second-year corner out of Michigan State who is just not there yet. He's the one that was responsible for one of the big play along the sideline last week, 31 on the Steelers. That's the one I think you should pick on. Otherwise, I'm pretty comfortable. Look, Minka's Minka, right? He just got a second time All-Pro. He's fantastic. I think Steven Nelson, while he's had a down year compared to where he was last year, still very good, really rebounded in the second half of the year. Edmonds has come on strong as a strong safety. Wow, that was terrible, actually. Terrible pun. And then, like you talked about, though, more Vince Williams in this game. The other one we should talk about is Robert Spillane at linebacker, potentially coming back in this game. No more Avery Williamson. I think Steeler fans should be pretty happy about that. Spillane was very good before he went down. So I'm going to give advantage Steelers here. But like you said, there are certainly some matchups to exploit.
Yeah, I think one of the things I saw when I watched All 22 is the tendency for the Steelers to just leave like linebackers on the slot.
Well, they did that last week. Yeah,
they did that last week. Now they'll probably have more corners available this week, so it's not going to happen as much. But they do like to blitz Mike Hilton a ton, so like you're still going to get those matchups. If you can get your protections right, so that's going to happen. And I don't think the Steelers' coverage linebackers are very good in that sense, and the Browns have a ton of tight ends. So I think, like I joke about the 5 wide. Our 5 wide is really 3 tight ends and like 2 wide receivers. When we go 5 wide, it's really what it is.
Hunt's out wide, something like that.
Hunt checks out from the the backfield and then spreads out, tries to get a linebacker mismatch. We know what 5 wide is in Cleveland. Now they do it often, right? They get in that empty set 5 wide often in Cleveland, more than you would think a team that runs that offense that the Browns does. But it's going to be interesting to see. I'm wondering, how do you attack the rushing attack thinking about that passing attack, right? Do you just go straight play action, or do you try to get them try to spread the Steelers out and then run from the shotgun like the Bengals had success, even though the Browns stink running out the shotgun for whatever reason. And I just feel like Cam Hayward's just going to get back there if you do that. So I think you just need to have the fullback out there if you just to worry about that blind spot. So it's going to be interesting. Now, I do think that the Browns are going to do pretty well here in the passing attack. One, I think a lot of the issues that Baker has had with the Steelers traditionally are things that he has showed that he has improved on during the course of this season. A lot of it is just like the sharpness pre-snap. We saw that week 6, right, where he threw that terrible pick 6 where he just was not sharp. Yeah, he was really confident in something that wasn't happening. Mm-hmm. And, the part of the reason he has not thrown a ton of interceptions this year isn't just because he's throwing the ball out of bounds. It's also because he's just being sharp on that pre-snap, right? There's a reason, right? People will criticize him. Oh, he gets to his first read and he just throws the ball. No, he's just right on his first read most of the time because he is being sharp in that pre-snap process. Now, that's going to be a big factor. And I do think that the Browns are going to be able to have enough firepower offensively with the run game to be able to get this passing game going. So I don't know which way this leans. I'm not really counting the points because there's only 4 things here, so nobody can win, honestly. But, I think this is one where I think it can be a dark horse where the Browns kind of surprise Pittsburgh and they end up having a lot more success passing than they might passing than they might running. And that might actually surprise some people with this game. But we talked about our position groups. We did all that. Any last thoughts about the breakdown portion of this game for you, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, you just hit it right there. The idea that the Browns may have more success throwing than people think, and I think that's absolutely right because the Steelers, what they like to do defensively, and every defense likes to do this, but the Steelers are very good at it, which is taking away what you do best, right? Let's put you in an uncomfortable position, right? And as I talked about, the Steelers are going to come out and they are going to try and stop Nick Chubb. They're going to stop Kareem Hunt, and that's going to mean that Baker's going to have to come through. That is going to leave, though. I mean, the Steelers are probably going to be loading the box. They're going to be hitting running lanes, and so that's going to leave some stuff open, especially in that play action game. I don't think we saw the Browns use a lot of play action last week. I don't even know they used a ton of play action in the first matchup, and so I think that's got to be a big part of this. A big part of this matchup is trying to do that, some rollouts, that kind of thing. I mean, any sort of misdirection that you can use against the Steelers defense, that's traditionally been the way to attack them. They've gotten much better at it in recent years. Of course, they've gotten much better talent in recent years. But I think you're right about that. That's the right way to attack this team. You start with that running game, but that passing attack can be where you do your damage.
You just throw the ball whenever the Steelers come out in that stack look and they have Minka over top. Just throw the ball to the opposite hash that Minka's on. That's just the best bet.
Well, what's interesting, you talk about the All-22 from last week. I got to tell you, though, the All-22 for me, watching the Steelers-Browns game last week was like watching a different Steeler defense. The amount of too high that they ran last week was just absurd. And by the way, they didn't have Edmonds, and Sean Davis out there. He was terrible in that game. I would think the Steelers are going to run more single high with Minka. I think they have to run more single high. And then I think you're also going to see them. They're going to bring the robber look back out. I mean, they're going to put Minka back in that robber look and just test Baker and say, hey, you're going to see Minka this time. I think that's all coming this week.
I think Cincinnati did the robber a ton the week after Baker threw that pick, and it didn't end up well for them.
Yeah, true.
I hope Baker has learned that lesson that translates to a better team. But that is a cautionary tale if they want to do that. But that's going to be the breakdown portion of this video. Tomorrow we're going to be releasing the other portion of this video. I don't know what to call it yet. Give me a break. But thank you guys for watching this part. Have a great day. Have a good night.